Okay, so I wanted to make a video show you guys how to do your measurements because I really think it's important that you stay consistent with how you measure your body parts. First of all, measuring your body parts is really a great tool to see your progress, and don't just depend on the number on the scale because that doesn't really say much. So you can be losing weight and your numbers on the scale could be going down because you're losing water weight or you're losing muscles even, or fat. You don't know which one you're losing. So that's not really the best indicator of your progress. It's a good tool to track your progress. The more tools you use, the better and more accurate you can be when tracking, in terms of tracking your progress. So measuring each of the body parts is really important, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So you take your measurements before you start the program and submit it to me. It's going to be part of the questionnaire because I need to have your starting point. We need to have something to compare to as we progress through the program. And every 2 weeks, every check-in that we do, you're going to measure your weight and also your body part measurements because it's a way for me to track your progress. So what you need is a tape measure, and I'm going to require you to measure your chest, your hips, your waist, your thighs, your arms, and your calves. So those are the main body parts that I want you to do. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you a way to have that consistent points. I have some tips for you of what area of your arms, what area of your chest or hips or legs or whatever you need to measure to be consistent. Every time you take your measurements, make sure you remember the exact spot you do it on and stay consistent. Every time you do your check-ins with me, try to measure the same part of your body, because some of the parts, if you measure your arm like at this point at the beginning and at this point and the next check-in and at this point, it's not going to be consistent. You're going to lose some inches or gain some inches here and there, and it's not a consistent reflection of your progress. Make sure the tape, measuring tape, is taut, not too tight, not too loose when you're measuring around that area of the body part. And also do it right after you wake up, first thing in the morning, after you wake up, after you go to the restroom, when you go number 1 or number 2, and before you exercise, to make sure, because when you exercise, you're swelling up your muscles and you're not going to get accurate measurements. So you have to do this without your clothing. So obviously I'm not going to do it here for the video, but when you do it at home, you take off your clothes so it's more accurate. And also, don't flex. Don't flex. The first body part, when you measure your chest, make sure you're measuring it around the nipple line. So right there. So it should be the widest part of your chest, and then measure it around there. And when it comes to waist, okay, you're doing this underneath your clothes, okay? You're doing this naked. You shouldn't have any clothing when doing this. So for your waist, it should be the narrowest part of your core. Mine is around here, right there. And if you can't find a narrow part, you can always just do it around your belly button. Just make sure you do it at that same spot every time you take your measurements. And for your hips, you measure it around the widest part of your butt. So whatever the widest part of the perimeter around your butt, where your butt is, that's where you measure for the hips. And then for the thighs, around the thickest part of the thigh, or if you can't determine which one is the thickest part, you do 10 inches from the middle part of your knee and then count 10 inches high. Going in the middle part, 10 inches high is around here in this area. You can choose whatever you want as long as you measure the same spot every time. And then for the calves, it's the same thing. Measure the thickest part of your calf. So around right here. Okay? Right there, the thickest part of circumference. And do it when you're standing and when you're relaxed. So if you need to have someone do it for you, call them and do it for you. And then for your arms, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. I suggest get someone to measure it for you if you can't do it. But what you do, you should be standing up, palms facing forward, and you should be relaxed. You shouldn't flex, and then you measure the thickest part of your arms or your biceps. So somewhere around there. So that's how you measure each of the body parts. And if you have one thing to take away from this, always measure the same spot so we can get a consistent and more accurate data. So another thing I wanted to discuss with this portion, since we're talking about taking record of your progress so you can keep track of how you're doing with your fitness journey, is how to take progress photos. So I talked to you about how to take your measurements, because that's one form of progress tracking tool, and this one is another form of progress tracking, and it's probably my favorite one because it's true that photos say 1,000 words. You know, there's no other way to see changes in your body better than taking progress photos. So I have some tips for you when you are trying to take your photos. The main angles that are usually useful is the front side of your body, and then you turn around and take a picture of your posterior part, which is your back side, and then the third angle that I want you to do is the side, your side angles. And then when you're taking progress photos, I want you to be as consistent as you can, the same way as when you're trying to take your measurements. So I want you to be wearing the same type of clothing. If possible, wear the same kind of clothes you wear from day one, and try to wear the same type of clothes throughout the time you're taking your photos. This will make it more accurate if you stay consistent. And when you're taking your photos, try to take it like an eye level, like straight angle forward. Don't try to take it from the top angle or from the bottom, because it's gonna skew the way you see your progress. And the way you take your photos, the angles will just screw everything up and it won't be that accurate. And the last thing I want you to do when you take your progress photos is to make sure you do it first thing in the morning, before you exercise, before you eat. Try to do it first thing right after you wake up, so it'll be as accurate as possible.